Chuck's captivating chat. Here we are. It's another Monday. It's a surprisingly hot day in Los Angeles. At least it feels that way. I forgot to check to see what the temperature is. A lot of you ask me this. It is what? 66, 66 degrees. It feels a lot hotter out there. Maybe it was my car. I didn't have my air conditioning on. I had a busy day running errands. I had to get a blood draw just for some routine health checking. No big deal. But I had to go to the doctor's today and I had to fight traffic to get back here. And for a little while, I was wondering if I was going to have to pull over to the side of the road and get out my iPhone and do my live stream that way. Thankfully, I am here. The only thing now is hoping I'm prepared to talk to you today. Usually, I have a little more time to settle and gather my thoughts and my notes, but I'm pretty good at it. I just have a notebook. I write down some ideas. I think about some videos I covered during the week, what's going on. So there's always stuff to discuss. So let me turn on my chat here, see if anyone's here yet. Well, hopefully some of you will be joining me soon. Um, you're all my friends, and I love when you come on here. I love your comments. I love your suggestions. Um, I love the interaction. Uh, it was a little strange this week. It's a Mercury retrograde. I don't know if people believe in that. I do. I have to believe in it because I've seen enough evidence supporting the validity of Mercury retrograde. In other words, I just see everything get completely chaotic. I had a message here. No, that's not for me. I'm not going to worry about that. But yeah, I've been feeling it. It just energetically, where you just feel a little overwhelmed, you feel stressed. Sometimes it's, oh my God, can I handle this? Um, you know, I because I have more subscribers now. I'm up past 1,300. I'm getting a lot more views. I'm getting a lot more comments. And on occasion, I will bring out an older video. And hey, Joyce, thanks for joining. I'll bring out an old video and recycle it, recaption it, maybe put a new description with it, because it might be something from 5 or 6 months ago and I had a much smaller number of subscribers. So many of you haven't seen it. And usually the response is positive. And I love the fact that I can give new life to these older videos because, I put a lot of love, I put a lot of thought into these. And a few of them I've thought, I'd like to even go back and reshoot and add some new thoughts to them. Um, Most of the commentary I get is quite positive. I put up one and I was kind of taken aback. I got a lot of angry comments, which I just was not expecting. The first time I certainly didn't get any kind of response like that, and I certainly meant no harm, but it was one of my naughtier stories. I've talked before about how I wonder just how controversial I should get with some of these pieces. I even worry about putting swear words in some of my pieces, but I test the waters just to see how people will respond. Well, I think I found one thing out this week. Um, as you know, Lucille Ball is very sacred to me. Well, she's very sacred to others. And one of my stories got, I think, misconstrued. It was Debbie said, "Naughty is what naughty does." Yeah, no, I honestly meant no harm by this because it was a story that Lucille Ball herself told to a friend of mine who used to work for her at Desilu Studios, and Lucy was laughing about it. But it was something that happened when she was younger, when she was a young actress at RKO Studios, and I even questioned bringing it up again here. But Lucy walked in on the mother of a good friend of hers in a compromising position with an RKO executive. And Lucy was understandably horrified and ran out of the room, but she laughed about it later. Well, anyway, I had people angry with me, like putting angry face emojis saying, "This is really bad, dude. This is not cool. You can't talk about Lucy like this." And I got even accused of misogyny, for women saying, "Well, you're supporting that women had to do things like this at the studios?" And well, of course not. My God, no. Anybody who knows me knows my heart, knows that is not who I am. But this is the big lesson we learn being on these channels on YouTube. I've been doing it for a few months now. I'm still learning as I go. And sometimes I'm just surprised at how something that I think is well intentioned and innocent will be interpreted totally differently by others. Now, has not happened to me too much, but it happened with this video. I was answering a lot of people's comments last night. I was a little behind on that. I've spent about 2 or 3 hours typing out responses to people. And then when I got to that, I was like, what? What? I couldn't even believe people were saying these things. And it made me feel bad. And I thought, well, yeah, I do want to address it. Uh, it's never my intention to speak maliciously of anyone, especially my beloved Lucille Ball. I never would do that. And I thought Lucy herself even found the story funny, but others did not. And I've learned those are not the kind of stories I should be posting on here, especially about Lucy. Lucy is just too sacred, but this is how I learn. I It's a dilemma because I've got a much broader viewership now, and it encompasses the gamut. There are people who love this kind of controversy, like it when you get a little bawdy, a little naughty, and then there's the other faction of people who are deeply offended by it. So it's a line you have to walk. I still even wonder about saying the F word, which I did in a video the other day. It was an older video I posted, but it was a quote. It was a quote from Carol Lombard to Clark Gable. She used the F word, as she was prone to do. In fact, Carol Lombard's nickname in Hollywood was the Profane Angel. She was so beautiful, so feminine, so glamorous, and she swore like a longshoreman truck driver. That's what she was known for. So yeah, I even question that from time to time. So I'm just gauging this as I go. And yeah, Pam, thank you for bringing that up. That was exactly what I was going to say, that Lucy was a human being. She was a flesh and blood human being. None of us walk on water. None of us are perfect. Um, we all have these aspects of ourselves. And, I think because I've been in the arts for so long, and because I've studied acting and writing, and I have fairly liberal, open minded, well educated friends, I usually don't think about this. I don't even give it a second thought because I just look at these as dimensions and colors of who we are as people. And I just see it as all good, but not everybody sees it that way. So, lesson learned, I'm just going to be a little more careful with the type of videos I post on here. Um, but anyway, I was thinking, what would be a good story for today? And I saw that last night was the 55th anniversary of Barbara Streisand winning the Best Actress Oscar. This is my portrait of Barbara Streisand as Fanny Brice in the movie Funny Girl. She won the Best Actress Oscar 55 years ago last night. Well, so did, and this is also my artwork, so did Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn that night won her third Best Actress Oscar on her 11th nomination for her role as Eleanor of Aquitaine in The Lion in Winter. In other words, the only tie, genuine tie in the entire history of the Motion Picture Academy was on April 14th, 1969, when both of their names were called. It was Ingrid Bergman who was presenting the award. It's a tie! You could just see the surprise on her face and the delight in the audience. Hepburn was not there that evening, but Streisand was. And she walked up on stage in this infamous see-through pantsuit. At least it wasn't supposed to be see-through. Oh, BD, thank you. Thank you for your comment. It was a pantsuit that was never intended to be see-through, but it was very sheer fabric and it was lined with flesh colored fabric. So it was purely an illusion and it was covered in sequins. But when Streisand went up on stage under the intense lights, it looked like she was naked under some very sheer fabric. She accepted her Oscar and said, "Hello, gorgeous." Her big line from Funny Girl. And Barbara said in her autobiography, the next day she called her mother up. "Hey, mom, what do you think? I won an Oscar." All her mother had to say was, "What were you thinking wearing that outfit last night?" That's all her mother had to say. But anyway, I loved it because how many years at the Oscars have we seen categories where it's very, very close, neck and neck, say between two performers? And we've often thought, well, isn't it a shame they both couldn't win? I remember that year with Sally Field and Bette Midler. That was a year I thought they both deserved. About 5 years ago, Natalie Portman played Jackie Kennedy, and of course, Emma Stone for La La Land. Emma Stone won, but I was of the opinion that was a year they should have split the Oscar between those two ladies. But anyway, this was the one year the Academy really got it right in a strange way, um, because both of those performances are just iconic. I think that possibly two of the most memorable female performances in the history of motion pictures. And they both got Oscars that night. And it was quite remarkable. It was a true tie. Technically, there was a tie before in an acting category. It was in the early 1930s, and it was Frederick March and Wallace Beery. And the Academy had different rules back then, where if you were within 3 votes, it was considered a tie. And in actuality, Frederick March had one more vote than Wallace Beery, but they both were given Oscars. In 1969, that rule was abolished. It had to be a perfect tie. So each woman got exactly 3,030 votes. That's just amazing how it worked out that way. I mean, there are theories. Barbara Streisand was a newly minted member of the Motion Picture Academy, and so she likely voted for herself. But I've seen so many other stories from Academy members. Well, it's because of me, because I voted for Hepburn. It's because I voted for Streisand. Everybody claiming their vote was that one vote that made the difference, that made the tie. Who's to say? It just happened, and both women got to take home Oscars, or at least Streisand. Who knows where Hepburn was that night? You know, Katharine Hepburn, never attended a single one of the Academy Award ceremonies that she was nominated for or won, and she only made one appearance, and that was to present, I think it was the Thalberg Award to a friend of hers. That was the only time. Um, I saw Hepburn on stage. This certainly dates me here. Back in 1982, I was a senior in college. Yes, do the math. I'm old. Uh, but it was the day after the Academy Awards. I went to a matinee performance of a play called The West Side Waltz. I was living in Richmond, Virginia at the time, going to Virginia Commonwealth University, and Hepburn was in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center. And when she won the Oscar that night, the next morning, I just got on the phone to see if I could get a ticket, and I did. I did. And I drove up there, got to see Hepburn the day after winning her Oscar. And the way the play opened, she had her back turned to the audience. She was walking in carrying firewood, and she turns around. And of course, the audience just went crazy, crazy. It was so intense that they had to stop the show. And Hepburn faces out to the audience and goes, "Well, don't you want to see if I'm worth it first?" And the audience laughed, and she started the play over again. So that was my Hepburn experience, my one time seeing her on stage, 10 rows center. And being the kid that I was, I didn't bring opera glasses. I brought big, obnoxious binoculars with me. And I was so close to the stage with those binoculars, I could see the pores in her skin but I was just thrilled. I was seeing the legendary Hepburn, and I've also seen the great Barbara Streisand on stage 4 times in concert, and in her case, my first time was 13 rows center. I'd always had this standing vow that I she didn't do concerts for 27 years because of stage fright. So I had this standing vow for all those years from the time I was a kid and I was 13 and first discovered her that if she ever gave a concert again, I didn't care if I had to sell my car, if I had to sell furniture, I was going to go see her in concert. Thankfully, I was financially stable enough that I didn't have to sell belongings, and I got the best seat I could possibly get, and boy, was that a thrill seeing my beloved Barbara Streisand. So anyway, I just thought that would be a great thing to tell there. I'm just seeing if I had any other notes about that evening. Um, yeah, one other thing I was gonna comment on is that night Streisand got that Oscar. I think that is literally the moment she became a bona fide superstar. This is a woman who had been around in show business at that point, like 8 years, and she was only 26 years old, and she had already won Emmys, she had won Grammys, and now she had an Oscar for Best Actress. It was technically half an Oscar, but it was an Oscar that still had great clout. I think the Academy Awards had a lot more meaning back then than they do now. And getting an Oscar was almost the equivalence of being anointed Hollywood royalty. And it was the next year she was presented with a special Tony Award and thus became an EGOT recipient, but there's always been a lot of controversy about that because the Tony Award was not won competitively. It was a special award, and it was even more controversial because it was called um, the Star of the Decade Award, which didn't even exist. It had never been presented before, and in the 50 years since, 54 years since, it has never been presented again. So they basically made up an award for Streisand, basically to get her to come to the ceremony, and so they could complete her the quadruple crown of the EGOT, the Oscar, Emmy, Grammy, and Tony. So that was the story right there. Let's see. Yeah, no, there was one other thing that Barbara said about her role in Funny Girl. You know, if you guys have never seen it, it's a real treat. It's a lot of fun. But she of course played Fanny Bryce, the great vaudeville entertainer, and of course later a stage star, radio star. But Streisand was talking about this in her autobiography that in her own research, she found Fanny Bryce's personality to be almost identical to hers. They shared so many similarities that Barbara said, basically, I just had to play me to play Fanny Bryce. So that was a little thing there. I thought that was interesting. And Barbara wrote a gracious note to Katharine Hepburn after the Oscar win and sent her flowers. And because Hepburn was about to do her first musical on stage, Barbara said, "You mean you have to sing too?" Which is cute. So I thought that was very endearing. And I'm just looking at comments here. Yes, I know I need to comment more on the Russ trial. I'll probably have to do that as a video because I don't really have enough information prepared here. And sorry about that dinging. I tell people not to call me or text me during the show, but they do it anyway. Anyway, let's just say that those are bells ringing, giving people what angels getting wings. Oh, somebody's asking about Sasha. Sasha is off in my kitchen somewhere. I don't know where she is. I don't know what it is with her. It's at her discretion when she decides to make an appearance on the show and when she decides to go into hiding. This is one of those days I have no idea where my dear little Siamese princess is. I don't know if I've said this before in some of the videos, but you may not know this, that it used to be the only way you could have a Siamese cat was if it was gifted to you by the King of Siam as a gift of royalty. Well, Sasha seems to have that encoded into her DNA, and she does not let me forget that fact. Never mind the fact that she smacks around stuffed mice from Petco and sleeps on top of my kitchen ledge by the air conditioner. Let's see. You can turn off the notifications on your phone. I did turn off the notifications on my phone. I don't know why it's still doing that. Of course, I know to do that. Uh, but anyway, I was trying to think. Now, what else can I talk about today? I some of my other videos, and I had a cute video today about, well, no, it wasn't today. It was over the weekend, about Fred Astaire and his former daughter-in-law. And I used to be acquainted with her, a lovely lady named Gail Trumbo, and she owned a theater in Agora Hills, and I had the great pleasure of doing a couple of plays there. It was on my 30th birthday. I starred in a production of Barefoot in the Park at Gail's Theater. It was called the Stage Door Theater. And then later, I did it was a two-man play called Greater Tuna, where each of us played 10 characters. And that was one of the most challenging things I have ever tried to do in my life, and I got very good reviews for it, and it was fun. It was, I've growing up, I was always a big Carol Burnett fan. Big. I thought, "I wanna be the male Carol Burnett someday." Well, that opportunity never came my way, particularly with the demise of, television variety shows. There just are not that many opportunities, but this play was almost, like a Carol Burnett show type of thing with those type of characters. So I got to do this where, yes, I know I'm getting off track here, but I'll get back on track in just a moment. But the way we had to do it, we had to treat every rehearsal as a dress rehearsal. The two guys who did it on Broadway, I'm sure they had dressers backstage and assistants helping them in and out of the costumes and the wigs and the hats and all that. We didn't have that. We had to do it ourselves, and sometimes there would be, like, 30 to 45 seconds to make the changes before you had to come back out in again as one of the other characters. So we had to devise something where we had, a dressing screen on stage that we could go behind, and behind there, we had everything. We had hooks, like, all the clothes numbered, we had the wigs lined up on stands, the hats all lined up, shoes, props, everything, and we had to just carefully rehearse it over and over and over to where we got really adept and could just seamlessly make those changes and come out in character. But I remember how exhausting it was, and my co-star, I after one of the first performances, I saw just so much sweat under his arms, and I said, "Were you nervous?" He said, "Did it show I was nervous?" I said, "Yes, because that was a tough show." But anyway, to get back to Gail Trumbo, she was once married to Fred Astaire Jr. Fred Astaire II, I think, was his official name, because she's the mother of Fred Astaire III. And she was telling the story of how she came out to Hollywood to be an actress. I think it was around 1954, 55. I'd have to look the year up because it was uh, the, the movie Daddy Longlegs. When she first came to Hollywood, she went to Grauman's Chinese Theater. It was almost like Janet Gaynor in the movie A Star is Born, when she comes there all wide eyed and eager to make it in Hollywood. And she's walking across the hand prints and Grauman's. Well, that's what Gail did. And she saw Daddy Longlegs, Fred Astaire's movie. And that later that day, met his son, Fred Astaire II. They fell in love and got married 1 week later, much to the tremendous chagrin of Fred Astaire the first. He never approved of the marriage, but that's a whole other story, and I don't want to invade Gail's privacy. I shouldn't talk too much about this other than what I talked about in the video. I thought it was really sweet. During the wedding reception, it came time for the father-in-law, daughter-in-law dance. And they're dancing, the orchestra's playing, And it suddenly hit Gail, oh my God, I'm dancing with Fred Astaire. And I asked Gail, well, what was it like? What was it like dancing with Fred Astaire? And she said, you know what? He was nervous and stiff. He actually wasn't that good of a dancer. Because he was nervous, he was uncomfortable. I think he was one of these people when he wasn't in character, when he, because he meticulously rehearsed his musical numbers and prepared everything, and he had a character, and it was all before the lights and the cameras and all. But this was real life, and a lot of actors, I've known this for myself, are very shy in real life, surprisingly shy and nervous. And that's what she said about her new father-in-law, Fred Astaire. And I thought that was a cute story. And let's see, what else was in the news this week? The Golden Bachelor. Jerry Turner and Teresa Nist announced their divorce after only 3 months of marriage. Surprise, surprise. I knew something was up when it leaked out in the press that on their honeymoon they were staying in separate rooms. It just reeked of this being something arranged for publicity. That big wedding they had on live television, I think it was January 4th. Um, I mentioned this in one of my videos that when I used to work in West Hollywood, I used to talk to a lot of actors, industry people worked at the studios, people who were on television shows. There was a woman who had been one of the contestants on The Bachelor. And don't ask me which installment it was, because I rarely watch that show. I have no idea what year it was. The woman, I don't even remember her name, other than I know she was on the level. She really was a contestant on the show. And she told me that the show it's fake. She said, it's semi-scripted. In other words, they give people scenarios to play out and they improvise it before the cameras. And furthermore, they assign characters to people. Like, you're going to be the good girl who gets hurt. You're going to be the troublemaker, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyway, she was assigned the bad girl, vixen, troublemaker. And she told me she was very naive about it and didn't think much of it. And she thought, oh, sure, I'll go along with it. I'll do it, and she signed all of her contracts and everything and played it on the show, not thinking about the impact it was going to have with the public. Because any of us that go through the grocery store, see those tabloids, see the Globe, see the Inquirer, see People magazine, all that. And usually The Bachelor or The Bachelorette gets a lot of coverage on those tabloid rags. And they love to play up these things. Well, she found herself being splashed all over these tabloids as this slut, this whore, really bad, bad stuff. And she told me it was humiliating and she was so hurt by it. And she said what really hurt her the most was how embarrassed her mother and father were, and her grandparents. And she said that hurt her more than anything, that she had embarrassed them. So when she told me that about how the show is rigged, I thought, yeah, I think Jerry and Teresa, um, I don't know what kind of compensation they got or whatever, but it's also interesting that it fell really close to the 3-month date. And it makes me wonder if they even had it in their contract that they had to stay together for 3 months, or at least give the facade that they were together for 3 months. Who knows? It's their business. But just a little something to remember when you watch these so-called reality shows. They're played up for ratings, and they're played up to be sensationalized and incorporate a little bit of drama in there, and that's what's going on. So I thought that was interesting. And yes, I always promise a Lucy story. And this is a very G-rated, squeaky clean Lucy story. I think it's going to be quite a while before I venture into PG or R ever again. But I told the story, one of my videos, of the dairy cow that had a mad romantic crush on Desi Arnaz. And this gives me a chance to elaborate on it a little bit more than I did in my video. Lucy and Desi, shortly after they married, they were married November 30th, 1940, and it was around spring of 1941. They purchased a 5 acre, uh, what they called a ranch, if you can call 5 acres a ranch, but it was very precious to them. And they wanted to take the lead of their good friends Clark Gable and Carol Lombard, who had a small ranch in Encino after they got married, where they had a self-sufficient farm and they had horses and they had chickens. And Lucy just thought that was the greatest thing. So once they started renovating the house and the property, Lucy started getting, first of all, she got chickens. Guess what inspired an episode of I Love Lucy many years later? Because they had this idea that these chickens were going to lay eggs and help support the farm. Well, they found that the chickens did not lay too well at all. And I think Desi proposed, well, why don't we just roast them? Oh, Campolo roasto. What's the word for it? But I know I got that wrong. Yes, I'm sure the comments are going to come for that one. But anyway, Lucy was horrified. No, no, we are not killing these chickens. She had fallen in love with every single chicken. So the big joke was, as the years went on, these were geriatric chickens, the oldest chickens in the world. They were so old, they were hobbling around on crutches. But almost every animal on their quote unquote ranch got to live a natural lifespan. Um, Desi wanted to roast a pig for Christmas one year. Well, guess what? They fell in love with the pig and they couldn't bear to slaughter it. So over the years, the pig just got older and fatter and became another pet. Well, they also wanted to have a dairy cow. And they bought this black and white cow that they named the Duchess of Devonshire. And yes, they fell in love with Duchess, and Duchess became a pet. And Lucy and Desi both said in their autobiographies they just couldn't bear the thought of ever slaughtering her. They loved her so much. Well, the cow fell madly in love with Desi, would follow him around, expressing how enamored the cow was. And Lucy said one night they were in bed, they had this great big glass picture window, and crash! In came the cow. The cow crashed in through the window, walked into the bedroom, walked right up to the bed, and started licking Desi's face. And that's when Lucy turned to Desi. Well, I guess this isn't going to be quite so G-rated after all. Lucy turned to Desi and said, "Well, it's your goddamn girlfriend again." And it was they were on that ranch from 1940 to 1953, 54. And they didn't want to ever leave. They loved it was out in Chatsworth. They loved being isolated out from the Hollywood scene, but they were a little too isolated because they had their 2 children at this point, and they were getting kidnapping threats. And they realized, for the sake of the children, it was not safe to be living in that isolated area anymore. So that's when they sadly had to sell their beloved ranch and move to Beverly Hills, to a high security neighborhood. Oh, and I forgot to add something. That ranch was the very first thing that they christened Desi Lou. The very first thing. They were taking a lead from Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford with Pickfair. So they tried variations like Desi's Ball, Arnaball, just bad combinations, and then they came up with Desi-Lou. It just kind of rolled off the tongue. And so that was the very first thing they called Desi-Lou, and, when it came time to part ways with their beloved Duchess, at tremendous expense, they paid a farm to take care of Duchess, to to ensure that she would be put to pasture, to retire, put to pasture where she would be fed and loved and taken care of for the rest of her life. But that's who Lucy and Desi were. What's this here? Yeah, I saw that, Debbie. You have to keep them preggers. Yeah, I guess that was the problem when they just had one cow. Who knows what they were thinking? That's almost a Lucy Ricardo kind of thing. What? But I was going to say in closing, I think that speaks really beautifully of Lucy and Desi because I feel that the way you treat animals and when you love animals, that says what's really in your heart. So that's what I'm going to close on for right now. I'm just seeing if I have any other comments here. I think we pretty much got everything. Yes. Imagine Fred Astaire being nervous to dance. Yes, that's true. And comments about Sasha. Yeah, she's still there somewhere in the kitchen. So I'm going to say goodbye right now. And I'm going to, first of all, thank you very much for joining me. Please like and subscribe my channel, Chuck's Captivating Chronicles, and keep the comments coming. And also, Sasha has her own channel, Sasha's Siamese Secrets. Please like and subscribe. So thank you so much for being here with me today. See you next week.